All right, hand it over to you, Erin.
Great. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our second live session for Art Journal Snacks. Really excited to be here with you all and to see you all again. And I'm looking forward to sharing some ideas with you all and also hopefully having some of you share. We had some wonderful sharing in our first stream and hope we can look forward to some more of that today. I wanted to talk about a couple things before we get started today because we didn't get a chance to cover it all that much last time. The first one being, why did I start doing this and why have I kept it up for so long? So I started art journaling the end of my senior year in high school and really in earnest when I started undergraduate school. And I actually will show you later on. I brought one of my undergrad art journals to show you a couple pages from. But I've been doing this consecutively without break, and I have boxes and boxes and boxes full of art journals. And one of the reasons that I do this is it's so useful to have this concrete thing that you can reflect back on times in your life in a way that's different from just a written journal or different from looking through an album of photos. It has so much more richness to it. So there's the benefit in the moment of doing it, and then the benefit that you get from reflecting on these things later. One thing I used to do pretty frequently was kind of compare side by side, right? So like, here's my birthday when I was 17, and here's my birthday when I was 21, and what was I journaling about, and what did my journals look like? So those types of things were really fun to do. So today, I wanted to start us off with something that could be a really useful reflection for you, something that you can return to over and over again in your art journal as a way to kind of check in with yourself, to check in with how you're feeling, what's going on for you, and then have that built-in reflective process that you can go back to, right? So if we do one today, and then you do one again next week or next month, you can compare them and say, oh, here's the way that they're similar, and here's some differences. I wonder what happened for me that made that change. Or maybe they're the same because this is something that's really important and true and real for me. Okay, so we're going to go to our journals, and I'm going to encourage you to have a writing utensil. So I have the Edding draw liner that we got in our first box. It's a really nice drawing and writing pen. So I like these tools, as I've said before, I like the tools that you can do multiple things with, right? That kind of serve multiple purposes. And this is a really nice tip on it, not too big and not too small, just right. And it moves really nicely on the page. So what I would like to invite you to do is starting with the phrase, I am, and then just fill an entire page with your I am statements. You could write as big as or as small as you like. And just try to write everything that comes to mind. It's hard for me to write and talk at the same time, but to write everything that comes to mind, whatever comes into your head, just put it on the page, don't censor it. So I am here, I am excited, I am an artist, I am creative, I am in California. I was in Oregon this morning, so that's significant. I am happy. Okay, I am alive, I'm thirsty, I am a little too warm. So checking in with yourself physically as well as you're doing this. I am here. If you get stuck, just go with something concrete, really trying to fill this whole page. Okay, I am awake. I am at the start of a new job. I'm sitting. I am in my studio. Okay, so page filled with your I am statements. And now looking at them, look at the one, try to find the one that feels the most significant to you, the one that feels like that's the one today that I really want to make something with. And I'm going to use the Marvy marker in a yellow, so kind of mimicking this idea of a highlighter. And I'm going to pick this one. Maybe the most basic of all the ones I wrote, but so I am alive. And then using the facing page to make some art that talks about all of the I ams, but especially the one that you found most significant. Okay, so I'm going to use the little heart ephemera that I got in the box. As alive has a heartbeat, right? Put that little heart in there. Okay, so I have the beginning of a page now, and then thinking about this idea of whatever it is, whatever your I am statement is, and then you're starting to depict it here. What does that mean to you, right? What does it mean to be alive? What is this alive beating heart doing? So I said it was a beating heart. So maybe doing something around the edges that start to make it feel like it's moving, right? It's beating, not just static here on the page. And one of the things that I love about these Marvy markers is that they are water soluble. So this is just a water pen, water brush pen. And I'm going in here and moving that pigment around a little bit. And I really love the way they work on the pages of this journal, because the line itself stays put, but just enough of the pigment moves. I just find it so satisfying. Sometimes with some markers, the whole thing blurs away, and this is just exactly the right amount of blending. Okay, so this is starting to get more interesting. And you can continue to play with this idea of I am alive, got a beating heart. What else needs to go here, right? What else is, how do I know that this is a beating heart, or what other things can I incorporate into this? And I'm looking at some of the other ephemera that I have here on my desk, and I have these, I thought these were kind of delightful and fun. There we go. These are from the little mini peppers, but I thought that these little faces were so sweet. And I like the look of them in here with this heart. So I might decide that they need to go in there. And this is something that I've talked about before, this idea of lost and found edges of something when you're layering in a piece. So your eye completes the heart here, but we lose some of the edges of the heart where it overlaps. And you can play with that a little bit by moving where this is. So you can see if I push this up a little bit here, I get a little bit more of that heart. Whereas if I move it down, because these two are darker, we lose it a little bit. So that might be something I want to play with when I'm deciding where to go. Okay. So I think just use some Elmer's glue to stick that down. And for this, I'm choosing the Elmer's glue rather than the matte medium that I have on my desk right now, because the matte medium I have is very, very matte. It's an extra matte medium, and it doesn't dry all the way clear, where I know this will dry all the way clear. Okay. So as I'm doing this, I'm kind of giggling in my head a little bit, because I know peppers can kind of cause cause a little heartburn for people, for some people. That's kind of a funny little thing going on between the piece of ephemera and then the story that I'm telling with the heart. Sometimes things like that just happen with what you bring together. Okay. So another thing I wanted to call to your attention, I left the little price tag on, or the place of origin on the package, just to even more kind of have those layers of ephemera. So when I was cutting this out in the kitchen, I made sure to leave that little sticker on there, because it deepens it a little bit, and it makes it a little bit more textured. So I'm opening up my ephemera envelope that we got in our boxes to see if there's anything else in here that might go with just the aesthetics. And I see that the stamp that I got, everyone got a little canceled postage stamp. I got this one from, looks like Denmark, but it's red. So I kind of like the idea of putting that into this. I've never been to Denmark, but I would like to go. Right over here. And what that's doing in this page is adding this kind of more, what I want to say, like a older texture to this, and a more matte texture, whereas this is really shiny and these are more modern. And this is matte, but this is older, right? So kind of, again, more texture, more interest, more visual interest. If any of these other little ephemera bits will go well with this. And I think I don't really see anything else that goes with this page. So next thing I might do with this is just add a little bit more. This is one of the paint pens that we got in the box. And now I'm going on top of that plastic from the pepper wrapper. And again, the lost and found edges and the lost and found text. So some of the text I'm obscuring with the mark making. And some of the little bit of the peppers, not too much. I don't want to lose my little pepper friends there. Okay. So I might keep playing with this. One of the things that I might do, and that you might decide to do, is to say, okay, I've got this whole page of I am statements. This is the one that's most important. These other ones, I want to kind of have them blend or blur or go into the background a little bit. So you might decide to use some kind of semi-opaque paint or tissue paper or something else over the top of these other words to kind of take them down a few levels so that the one that is most important stands out. Okay, so that's one way that you might choose to do that. There's lots of other ways that you could choose to continue working on this page, even obliterating some of the other text. All right, so we're going to get out one of my favorite art supplies that is not from the art store. So this is wax paper that we're going to put in between here so that I can flip back a page. Okay, so maybe coming back to that, maybe working on that some more. That is something that I would recommend doing frequently. Again, starting with I am and writing, and then using some of your writing to make a decision about what you're going to create. All right, so now we're going to do something that we'll repeat with every box. We'll do this idea of 3 ways to use some of the materials from the box. Okay, so got my 1, 2, and 3 boxes here. and we're going to experiment with 3 different ways to use the materials. So one is with the Marvy markers. Let me get them all out here. And you could do this in your journal on a page like I've done here, or you could experiment on a bunch of different pages, right? One page after the other. You don't have to have it smaller in a box like this. I'm just doing this so we can see them all at once. So with the markers, I can start with this same kind of idea of putting down just lines. And I'm using the brush side right now. What I like about these also is that the brush, depending on if you use the tip or you use the side, you can really vary that line weight. Plus they have that very fine point side on the other side. Okay. So there's kind of a complementary color thing going on here with the purple and the yellow. And then again, I'm going to go in with a water brush and start to move these around. I'm just going with the purple first, and you can see where the purple is blending so beautifully in with that yellow. Just starting to get a little more interesting in here. So you could do something like this, fill a whole page like this, doing the entire journal page and then using that as a background. You might, while it's still wet, go in. Now I'm using the very fine point side. And some spots are wet and some have dried a bit. So it's going to bleed, it's going to move a little bit around. So it's almost like weaving. And this process actually feels very satisfying, very soothing. It's nice to fill a whole page like this, but there's also something to be said for working within a constrained box, right? It's kind of like you're creating your own little space to work in. It also feels a little more manageable and maybe a little less scary if you're experimenting with some kind of technique that's new for you. A few more of these red lines. And making a very satisfying sound on the page as well. And we'll go in again with some water and move that around. You can see when I'm working, I'm really not hesitating that much. And this is something that takes a little while to get brave around. Remember, this is your journal, right? You get to play here and you can experiment, and you can get messy and you can try different things. And if you don't like it, you can just cover over it or not show anybody that page. There's a whole lot less risk with art journaling. It's a lot more free and creative if you can kind of get out of your own way. Okay. So kind of interesting things happening there. I'm going to let that dry a little bit. And now we're going to use the acrylic paint pens that we got. So we'll use these in the number 2 box. And with these ones, I'm just going to start with creating a space or a division of the space here. And Lee and I were talking about how I paddle, like do stand-up paddle boarding before you all came on. So this is already starting to turn into something about paddle boarding, maybe. So one of the things I like about acrylic paint pens is the variety of marks that you can make, right? You can completely fill a space, completely fill a shape with thick opaque color, or you can do mark making, or you can scribble in a way that is a little more kind of like a dry brush, right? And they all have their own personality. So again, it's like, what is the story that you're trying to tell with the materials? And let's see. I think I will, when I go out paddleboarding, I try to wear bright colors. So let's see here, there on my board. And my big long paddle. And then, so again, just like a little stick figure, right? I'm not getting too fancy about this. And then because it's an art journal, it's like, what is this? What is the feeling of this? And the feeling for me is freedom. So I'm using the paint pen pretty thick here because my intention is that I'll go back with maybe watercolor and add some sky in here. That's my other favorite thing about paddling is seeing the amazing skies on the water. So again, experimenting with blending the colors together, scribbling, using simple mark making, and then later this acrylic paint pen will act as a resist against watercolor. And if we go back to our square number 1, we can see that where it's been really saturated, it's even moving more, which is kind of fun. Okay. And then the third thing that we can do with materials from the box is incorporating some of the collage ephemera and doing something that's really about materials, right? It's not so much about mark making or painting, it's more about materials. So this is one of the pieces of the color aid paper. This is the color that I got, and it almost fits perfectly in there. So I'm going to rip that across there, and I'll start out with that. And that's really light, so I think maybe that one there. And I like the idea of it having the color aid coming through the holes, the plain page of the journal, and then a little bit, this is that wax crayon here. Then I'm just going to use a little Elmer's glue to put this down. And I'm actually just going to adhere it on the sides so that in the middle, still have the raw paper. And then I have a little bit left of the tape from the Art Journal Snacks box, and I think I'll put some of that down as well. Over here. Do one last thing to add onto this page. I guess I must be ready for Valentine's Day tomorrow because I'm making lots of hearts today. Oh, cool. So lots of different layers. What is going on here, three different ways that you can work with materials in your journal. One is to think about, I'm just making backgrounds. Right now, my focus is just to make backgrounds. I'll figure out what goes there later. The next is depicting some kind of an idea, something that's important to you or something you want to explore more through journaling about it. And the last one is not using mark making tools at all, but rather using ephemera and building up collages. The mark making is kind of helping to contain it a little bit, but it's really much more about the physical materials, the things you're putting onto the page to start with. So all three of these can continue to develop, right? There might be a little collage element that goes in here or some other materials. This one, like I said, will probably get some watercolor. This one will probably get a lot more mark making. In fact, I think I can start out with the white brush pen and add in almost like the heart is stitched on here. And I know I've said this on Mix, but remembering, you're noticing I'm not squeezing this. So make sure, even though it says on the pen to squeeze it, don't squeeze it. And if you do squeeze it and you get a big white bubble, no big deal. Just wipe it somewhere on a page and go back to it later. Cool. All right, so 3 fun pages to play with that you can continue to explore. And I need another piece of wax paper here. So I always have rolls of wax paper in my studio so that I can say, all right, Paige, I'm gonna let you rest for a bit and I'll come back to you later. So we've talked about this before, that kind of feeling that comes up when you turn the page and, oh my gosh, here's this blank page. What do I do? How should I start? What should I do in this space? And again, kind of thinking about, am I going to let the materials guide me? Am I going to let how I feel right now guide me? Or am I going to play with some ephemera and see what comes from there? So I think I'm going to start with that, and then we'll see where the page goes. But I noticed that I have these 2 pieces on my desk that look really nice together. So this is one of the color aid pieces that we got, and this is a small piece of very wrinkly, very textured paper, but they're kind of lovely together. So we'll start out with them. And I've said this before as well, that I kind of alternate between coming to a blank double page spread like this and completing the whole page in one sitting, or flipping through a bunch of pages in my journal and starting a bunch of pages and then coming back to them later. So I'm going to offset this a little bit. So it's already kind of interesting to me how this is coming together. And I think because I was playing with complementary colors earlier, I'll probably bring in some yellow and purple with these fleshy orange colors here. So this is tissue paper. And when you're putting glue stick on tissue paper, you just have to be careful because it does kind of wrinkle up a little bit, but it helps to hold it in place. And then you can always go back over it later with matte medium or Mod Podge. Have it stick down a little better. All right. So where that edge is coming up, I'm just going to take out some gold washi tape. I'm going to put that right in there. And this is yet another texture, right? With this one, you can feel the texture. With this one, you see it. Let's see what else I have on my desk that might look nice with this. I have this paper. But now I'm starting to get kind of a lot of squares, a lot of hard edges. And I tend to like more organic things. And then I'm thinking about what wants to be on this page. So I wonder about making a little self. I was teaching a dolls and puppets class all weekend. So got little doll forms on the brain right now. Again, easy to cut something out like this, right? You might say to yourself, I can't draw a person or I can't do a self-portrait, but you can definitely do this. Right? And this can be this little self-representation. I think I want it to have, let's go up there. This is a little bit thicker paper, so I'm going to use some Elmer's glue to hold it in place. And have it offset a little bit here. Okay. I think I'm going to go back to that technique we were using on the other page. So pulling some of the purple from the facing page over to this page now. And I'm using that same technique that we were experimenting with before. On the side of the marker. I think I'm going to do that same color combination. I really like the way that looks. I'm going to use a lot more water this time. I really want it to move around and start to go right up to those edges. So I stopped the marker a little bit before the edges of this paper, but now I want it to go onto it a little bit. Again, try to experiment with going fast, with moving fast, right? When you are too slow and you don't let yourself just experiment and play, a lot of times you start censoring yourself. So it's a little easier to get more authentic journaling by going fast sometimes, just seeing what happens. Like I did not plan to use the white in this, but I'm really loving what's happening there where the white is moving into those pigments and kind of obscuring them in some spots, staying in a line in others, and bleeding in with the rest of the pigment. That's really fun. Okay, so now I've kind of been focusing on this side, and this is another thing that can happen when you're getting really interested in the materials, is that all of a sudden you look over and you say, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about this side. What's happening to this page? So I'm going to take that same purple and just start with putting a little border around the edges, going right over the top of this tissue paper. And you'll notice the tissue paper we got in the box, it's a waxed tissue paper. It's got a light wax on it. So it takes material in kind of an interesting way, not like gift wrap tissue paper or the bleeding art tissue that some of you might be familiar with. So now things are starting to feel a little more connected. I'm gonna blend that back. Also kind of a fun art thing to see when you add water to a marker, a water-based marker, you can see some of the other colors that were used in the making of that. So if you look closely at this, you see quite a bit of blue coming out in the way these markers move. Okay. So starting to get a little more interesting here, right? Starting to fill up this page. A lot more stuff is happening. And this is usually the point where I start having this internal debate with myself about, do I want to add words or do I want this to be visual only, right? And starting to kind of wonder to myself what I'm going to do. And I don't always know at the beginning. So I usually will take a moment, I'll look, I'll think about it, look at what I have around on my desk. I have a little collage that I made with some text. I don't remember what originally was there, but I added these letters in. So it said, can a book carry hope? Mine can. So that might be kind of a fun thing to add in. And it could be a page about art journaling. Other thing that's here on my desk is where I cut that heart out, the outside edges. So with fun paper like this, of course, you can't save all the scraps, but sometimes saving the scraps gives you some other pieces that you can incorporate into your journal. So moving it around, trying to decide where it makes the most sense or where it's going to be the most interesting. What else do I have here on my desk? Other thing I have is the cutout from this guy. And so this actually is really interesting to me, like the positive and the negative, and how I might incorporate that in. And I kind of love that with the way that the brush strokes are in the head space. I think we'll go with that one. For those of you that are kind of wondering, like, oh my gosh, what is she doing on that surface there? Hot tip, go to the pet aisle in your grocery store or go to the pet store and get the dog house training pads. They're really awesome for putting underneath your art space because they're water absorbent, right? And they work really well. I mean, when it gets too covered with paint and glue, then you just take it and put another one down. It works really nicely. Okay, I like this. I like how I have the space that's being filled in the negative space and then the positive one, but it still feels like there's some things missing. And this is one of the things that came up lately on Mix is, how do you know when a page is done? How do you know when there's more to be done, there's more things you want to add? And it's kind of this looking at it and seeing, where is there empty space that I like? And then where is there empty space that feels, I'm just not sure, that seems like something needs to be there, but I'm not quite sure what yet. So in that case, I like to put a little bit more mark making down. So again, thinking about this idea of lost and found edges, where can I disrupt the edge of that square a little bit more?
Hey, Erin, this is Lee.
Yes.
I just wanted to give you a heads up. We're about halfway through here. Time check.
Great, thank you. So I'm thinking with this page that one of the things that I might do is add some ribbon or something else that has some fabric texture to it. That'll kind of be the plan for what'll happen with the rest of this page. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry for a bit and come back to it. The other thing that I might do actually is I'll do that right now, is a little bit of gold onto this page. Just a tiny bit. So I'm ripping the washi tape so that it doesn't have a hard edge here. There you go. Okay, and then maybe I'll go in with some gold paint in there. All right, I'm going to set this book aside completely. And I want to show you this moment of kind of deciding whether a page is done, right? And how do you know? And this is a page that I was working on for quite a while, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it next. One of the things that I like what's going on in this page, and you can see it here again, is that same figure, right? Just simple head form. The way that the shoulders are on this one is a little bit more expressive. But I didn't feel that this page was done. And I think that what I would like to do to help it feel done is, again, this white space here. This is gold acrylic paint and pencil. And then there's this white space here in between the fingers. And I think just that one little thing is going to help it feel done. And because there's this turquoise color coming through that's actually from this side, and it came through and I really loved that. I'm going to go in with a little bit of turquoise, just right up against the pencil lines. And this is one of my just favorite things in art journals, is where the pigments come up against each other, where something has a bit of a resist. You get that beautiful messy edge. So just a little bit of this color on this page, and then I think I'm going to feel like it's done. But it's been sitting here waiting for quite a while. A little bit of that over here. Right, so now this to me feels complete. It was just missing that part there. That part seemed a little too light. And this would be a page that I would say, like, okay, I feel good about that. I'm ready to let that one rest and let that one be. Here, give me this little stack of art journals. All right, so I wanted to do a little bit of art journal touring with you all. This is another journal that I'm working in right now, same size as our ArtSnacks journals. And there were a couple pages I wanted to show you and talk through a little bit. This one I did on Instagram and then finished. But again, kind of the mark making, using repetitive mark making, the paint strips, right? Here's another page with paint strips, using the writing as texture. Again, using writing as texture. Here's the paint strip. Mixing a lot of materials, doing some writing. It was very simple, but with collage and then writing, and then kind of going back in. So there's an iridescent paint that's up here. When I put this down, I didn't notice at first these little chairs and table out here in the snow. Much like the I am writing, so this is I am down here. And another thing you can use is numbers as texture. So this this is just, I was waiting for a class to start, and so I was just writing numbers until the class started. I got to 125. Here's Sam. She's in the other room whistling. Quotes from a yoga teacher. This one has a lot of kind of weird ephemera in it. So this is actually cut up a can of sparkling water. And then this is from the box of that same sparkling water. But I love that big peach there. And then this one I was working on during the class I was teaching yesterday. And this is just the silliest piece of ephemera. It's a wiring key, and I liked that it had all the colors in here. But this part just mystifies me. This is one of those things about ephemera that I just find so strange. So in the wiring color key, the stripe is understood, and I don't know what that means, but I just really love it. Travel journal, including a card. So this is a card that someone sent me, and it's included here. From the topic class I was teaching. It's kind of a little fun going back and forth. This is photograph of Lee Krasner, the artist, and she wanted to be in there. And just a little bit more with ephemera and texture and adding all these things in. And here's a page that's just writing. Someone was talking about using song lyrics. This is a dialogue from a show I was watching. And then a little bit more journaling. This one I put on mix for you all today. Here's what I was talking about: cutting a door and then making it so there's something behind the door. So this little bird and a nest inside there. Okay, so that's a little tour of another journal that I'm working in. And then I wanted to show you this one, because this one is from, you can see how beat up they get, right? Because they go with me everywhere, and they're always in my bag or always with me in some way. So this was a handmade book, and I have the definition of inspire there on the cover. And this one I made with grid paper. This was in my final year of undergrad, and this just cracked me up when I flipped to this page, because this was going to visit grad schools. So these are the directors of the different grad schools that I was considering when I was looking at studying art therapy. So pretty funny to see that. And then another thing that's in here, this one is kind of incorporating, we've talked about this, like putting check boxes in and then checking them off and having that satisfaction. Little tea tag from my tea that I was having that day. And then here's some ephemera sorting that I was doing for my senior project. So I made that into its own little checkbox. So that's an old journal that I wanted to share with you all. Again, looking at the edges of it is one of my favorite things to do. And this one certainly has some worn edges. Well worn and well loved. Also, for some reason, I have my some family members' phone numbers on the back of this one. I'm not sure why. Memories that have disappeared into the art journal abyss. Okay, one more thing I want to show you, and then I'd love to invite you to share and ask questions. We've been talking about this idea of like what can or can't you put into an art journal, and I smashed some old watercolor tubes, and this one actually became the part of the cover of this art journal. So I thought that was kind of a fun use case for something that would otherwise just be tossed away. All right, so those are my tours that I have for you all, and I would love to invite people to share and ask questions and talk about materials and anything that feels useful.
All right, let's see here. If anyone wants to share, feel free to raise your hand. Marion, let's go. Hold on, replace spotlight. Go for it. Here you go.
I don't have anything that I've been, hang on if I can turn the camera around here. Anyway, I don't have anything I've been doing in the class because I have been putting together my new art studio. So I thought I'd show you all, give you a little tour here. There's gonna be a desk over here that isn't here yet. But my children made these paintings when they were like 3. So a desk, and then we have, we should back up. Here we go. We have some bookcases that have like my pens and stuff, and then this big central one, which
Marion, this is a lovely tour. Do you have
There you go.
anything to share about your art journal?
Well, this is where I'm going to make it. I just wanted to show you what I've been doing instead of paying attention to class is putting together this new art studio.
Totally fine. Totally. It looks beautiful.
That's really fun. It's important to have a space where you can kind of organize your things. And I saw some bins there with some old photos in them, and it's just really great to kind of have those things at your fingertips. One of the things I talk about doing, which you all can't see the chaos that's right here in my kind of arm's reach right now, but I like to work with inside what I call like an art nest, where I'm sitting there with my journal or whatever I'm working on, and everything is reachable, right? Like, so when I'm working on a page and I'm really into it, I can reach over here and get some tissue paper, and I can reach over here and get, just the right magazine image or some other different materials. And having all of those things at arm's reach is such a great way to work. And this is why I love art journaling so much. Sometimes all you need is a pen, right? So it's this really rich place to play creatively, because you can have all the materials or just a few really awesome materials, and you can still do a lot of journaling. So thanks for sharing your studio with us.
All right, let's go to Elizabeth. Let's see. Play spotlight. There you go. Elizabeth, unmute yourself. Feel free.
Thank you. All right, this is all very new to me, so I'm just really experiencing this and really enjoying the class. But my mother is failing very fast, so I wrote that. And then I just picked a card that she had once sent me and cut it up. And she loves wine, so that had an M in it, so I included that. So it's pretty, elementary, but that's what I did. So
wonderful. It's beautiful to see you kind of following the same directive and making it personal for you, right? And that's the whole idea. Like any of these journaling prompts is hear it and then try it and make it make sense for you or fit your life in some way. And yeah, as Sarah said in the chat, it's not elementary.
All right, anyone else want to share? Let's see, I'm going to scan people that are with us today. Let's see. Anyone else? Anybody? Oh, Jenny. All right, let's go. Let's see. Spotlight. There you go.
Oh, I love the owl.
That's what I've been playing with today.
Wonderful.
Owls. Superb owls. Not Super Bowl. Superb owl. Wonderful.
Oh, I'm seeing some other hands.
Other hands. Well, let's see. Put their hand up. Is it Sherry? There you go. All right. Replace spotlight. There you go.
Thanks. All right, so I think this page is in process. But I created this with some ephemera. First I did the watercolor. Actually, my favorite part are these roots. They're matte medium. So I love the feel. I just like to feel it all the time. Anyways, and then the ephemera is from a father-daughter ball that my husband and daughter go to all the time, or every year. And she's 21 now. So this is from the most recent that they went to. So that was pretty fun. I don't know if it's finished. I can't decide.
Yeah. And I love what you brought up about the touch, the feel of it as well. There's so many pages that just also feel good.
Yeah.
So thinking about that, I'll give you a little sneak peek that our next box is going to have quite a few bits of ephemera that have a really interesting feel to them.
Oh, fun. I love that. So, the other thing actually I found at the library today is this book. It's in there. They have a section of free magazines and then some paperbacks for 50 cents. And this is a photography book from 1965. And I thought, I have no idea what I'm going to do with it yet, but it's pretty cool with some of the illustrations. And the color pictures are actually glued in here. I'm looking for one for you, like this one. That's just glued in so I can feel the edge. I thought that was pretty neat.
That's amazing. Yeah. Very cool.
That's great. Oh.
But I'm just putting.
I have an assistant. Sorry, guys. This is Emily. She was drawing as well. Maybe she'll share after, but let's get to people that are on the Zoom here. Anyone else feel like sharing? Oh, Jean, there we go.
I've just been sticking some random things down as I go through my days. This is a label from my black olives that I opened. And I started this page, just says be the fearless me. And I took that from the ephemera pack. And then this is what I worked on tonight while watching. And that's all I have.
I see one of the paint chips in there on that page.
Yes.
Great. Wonderful.
I also gathered more paint chips when I was at the store.
One of these days, the paint companies are going to come after me for suggestions to people, but it really is a great journaling start.
So we should make a paint chip snacks. Is that what we should make?
You always come home
Thank
with. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you for sharing.
Sure, of course. Anyone else? While we're here, we have plenty of time.
So since Jean brought it up, I'll show you what I've done with the text sheets. Put it, spotlight the downward cam. There we go. So I treated them with a crackle medium, and then I've been watercoloring over top. And so now I have this text that's getting kind of really interesting, right? Again, thinking about this idea of how can I take this piece of ephemera and age it or change it in some way so that it becomes just more textured, more interesting, more personal to me. So 2 examples of doing that, and it's just an acrylic medium that you can get that produces that crackle, which is pretty fun.
Very cool. Very cool. We have so much time, Erin.
Well, I can definitely go back to another page. Yeah. Okay. So this is another example of one of those pages that I started and then wasn't sure what else to do with it. So this page has some washi tape. It has some fine point things that I was using a stencil, and then some distressed paper up here, a little bit of stamp pad ink, and some acrylic pen. And I wasn't sure what else needed to go here, and I just left it, and it's just been sitting here waiting for the next thing. And so I think first thing I'll do is start to bring out these dots and adding more dots beyond, again, the lost and found edges. So I've got that tape there that has kind of a hard edge and a regular dot pattern, and I'm going to use the acrylic pen.
Hey, Erin, we got a comment from Sherry in the comments here. She
Mhm.
said, I tried the crackle medium and it didn't crackle very obviously. Do you have any tips for using it more effectively?
Yeah, so you have to get kind of that just right, not too much and not too little. So I can show you that here. Is that in focus? Yeah. So here it's a little thicker. The cracks are a little bigger, but it's not as interesting. Other thing to do is if you're putting it on paper like this, you can kind of wrinkle it up a little bit after it's dried, and that'll help you get better crackles. But if you also want to do just a single brush stroke. So unlike other media where you're kind of going back and forth with your brush, with this, you just want to put it on and don't brush back. Don't brush over and over in the same spot, because you're making it not react in the way that it's meant to. So it's in some ways it's kind of trial and error, but that not brushing over and over is a big tip. There are also crackle mediums that are more sculptural, so you want to make sure that you've gotten the one that's more of a glaze rather than the one that's meant to go on something sculptural, because that's going to dry opaque and kind of be sad if you were putting it over something you wanted to have appear through. I say that from speaking from experience. Okay. So, and some more little blue dots over here. And sometimes I think about doing mark making like this as kind of a thinking space in a positive way, like not the spinning wheel of death from your computer where your computer's thinking about something right before it crashes, but rather a positive contemplative thinking. Okay. And now I have this spot here where I'm seeing into the gutter of the book a little bit because I didn't get the tape right in there. And I want to, again, start to blend, lose the edges of this. And I can already tell that this page is starting to feel a little too 4th of July. So it definitely needs some other colors in here. And so you can see here where there's some media that's resisting. Again, this is like my favorite thing in working with mixed media and working in art journals. So we need some more color in here. Mm-hmm. Another thing that I think about, like you do with any piece of art, is think about the composition and think about balance. So if I do one little area of a color, I generally like to do an odd number. So I'll put 3 in. And then if I do it on one page, I generally like to add a little bit onto the facing page. Because most of the time when I'm working in an art journal, I work on what we call the double page spread, right? So both pages together. Because this has this really strong vertical element in it, it feels a little bit like I need something that's going to span across that and have this piece of collage that is in all these same colors. So this might be kind of a fun thing. Maybe just edge here. This is from a catalog that had some ceramics. Yeah, I like that. So again, this is not planned. That's what's so wonderful about having all these things in arm's reach. So I have here the circles and the repetition of the circles here, the way that there are kind of thicker lines with smaller lines in between it. So we'll add this guy in. And I'm covering over some of the stuff, but that's okay. Let's get that up to that edge. And again, losing and finding that edge, right? So at the edge of the book, and then using some of the acrylic paint pen to go back into this magazine and make it a little more opaque in those areas. Maybe. So starting to come along with this page, it still feels very unfinished to me. I think this grid here, there might be something interesting that can happen with that. Even maybe the grid here is kind of like the check boxes. Maybe that can go in there. So something you may have noticed me saying over and over and over as we've been together today is the word maybe. And again, this is one of those things that I really love about art journaling is there's so much possibility, and you don't have to have it all figured out from when you start. And in fact, I would say that it's going to be more beneficial for you and more interesting for you if you don't always sit down with a plan for what you're going to do, but rather let it evolve as you go. And let yourself change your mind. Okay. So starting to get a little more interesting now. Starting to come together a little bit more. But one of the things to think about with a page like this is what's happening here, right? So it, to me, feels a little bit chaotic and a little bit like I'm not sure who's in charge of this page, meaning like visually, what is the intention behind it, or what is the message of this? And so something as simple as like one word. I'm going to put this word new right here above the checklist. So the checklist can be about something new. And then I'm just going to add a few more things into this little diagram that's happening over here. Maybe it's a diagram about the new thing. Maybe this is the new thing. I might go in later with a fine point pen and label what all these little circles are about. What is the relationship between them?
Erin, we got a good question in the comments here.
Okay.
From Sarah. She says, do you feel differently towards your art journals that you use in examples in teaching and therapy as compared to your, quote, for my eyes only type of journals?
Oh, good question. I am pretty open with who I am and what I think about. And, you know, there are a few pages that I might not show to people. There are definitely a few pages from like my early adulthood that I don't necessarily want to put out on the internet, right? But it's kind of one of those beautiful things about an art journal is that you can have secret spaces in here, right? You can have pages that you don't show to people. For me, a lot of the time, the art journal is about enjoying being in the process of making and enjoying trying new materials and trying new materials in different combinations. So I say that, but it's different than a sketchbook, right? Because we do that in a sketchbook too, right? You try out different materials, you see how they work, you swatch them out. This is like swatching, but also with the layer of emotion and curiosity. So I'm trying this new to me material, but I'm trying in a way that's not just what is this mechanically capable of doing, but also how do I feel when I use it? So that then I know when I want to make a big bold mark, I'm going to go for an acrylic marker, or you know, I'm going to get a big wide brush or a very bold brush pen and really write in a big hand, right? Because I've tried it out in my journal. And when I want to express something strongly, I know what materials I need. Or if I'm feeling timid about something, then I can get something that's a little more fine point. It's maybe a little more delicate, and I can express with that in a way that that more directly reflects what it is that I'm feeling in the moment. And for all of you, I would encourage you to think about, you know, what do I do that is for me? And what do I do that I want to share? Because there's something really wonderful about sharing as well, and having this book that you can open up and hold out and show people. Any other thoughts or questions about things?
Yeah, feel free to leave it in the chat. We have, say, 12 minutes left to our session here. So if you also feel like sharing something you worked on today or more recently, let us know.
Ends from the pieces that I cut up from around this, and I'm gonna just tuck these in because I'll probably come back to them later, maybe elsewhere. And I can show you another page. This is again another page that was started that I'm not sure what it's going to be yet. It'll be something interesting. Something next. And again here, right? A page that's just waiting to become something. And this one I do have a plan for. So this one I was going to do one of those drawings where you kind of draw everything that's in your bag. So someday that'll happen in here.
Erin, did you want to share something that's coming in a future box, or not yet?
Let me see. I will say that one of the things coming in a future box will look familiar to some of you. Familiar and surprising. We'll get some text that is, I think, really exciting. I'm excited for some of that. And let me go back to that page. There it is. Some of you will get to visit the text that this came from, the wiring and the understood stripe. So let's hear about that. And I see questions in the chat about how many journals people work in. Generally, when I'm not doing this, because I need to have a couple of books going so that I can show you working on blank pages. Generally, I work in one book at a time, front to back, all the way through. Just kind of in my life, that's what I do. But I've also had periods of time where I had like a separate journal going that was just for quotes that I was working with, or one that was just about kind of cards that I had received and then responding to the cards in a journal. Do I date my pages? Good question. This is something that some people have strong opinions about. Some people like to work chronologically, start to finish, front to back of the book. Personally, I like to date the front of the book, and then I make a space at the end of the book to date it. And the ArtJournalSnacks journals are great because they have that perfect spot on the back to put your end date. Oops, the other one. So here, right, you can put your ending date there, or you could put your start and end there on the back side. So that's what I like to do. I don't date all my pages, but sometimes a date will end up in there, right? So this journal has travel, and so it's got plane tickets in it. So it has dates. So I know that I was working on this when I was on the plane with a bad delay. Any other questions or things people want to share?
Questions, comments, suggestions, reflections, all the shins. How do we like this Monday night session? This is new for us. You can leave a comment in the chat. Works for a few people, Kathy.
Oh, the insert on this page that I have up right now. Yeah, we're actually we'll do a whole session about like tip-ins and inserts, but this one, again, I was teaching a dolls and puppets class. And so this is a crow paper doll that I inserted in. And I actually I constructed this whole little thing with a button so that it wouldn't fly away when the book was open. So the crows go right there, and then the button slides under this part. And it's a little bit thick, but it'll still work for closing the page. I actually stitched onto this page also. This page has a lot of texture and more travel ephemera from traveling up there to teach. Yeah, pretty fun. I always work along with my students when they're working on things in class. So my art journals always teach with me also.
That's great. So we got a few comments here about some people like Monday night. Some people do dinner, which is totally understandable, which is why we record these. I think some people enjoy having designated time to work.
And that's huge. I would say that you should, I don't like to use the word should, but it is kind of a good practice when you're, especially when you're starting to art journal, to set that time aside for yourself. So whether that be the time that we have our live sessions or another time that you even put it into your calendar and block it off and say, this is my journaling time. I'm going to get all my things out, right? So that you can do the thing that we talked about where you've got it all in arm's reach and you can get to all those materials. And that will help it become more natural, more part of your daily life, right? And I do consider it part of my daily life. If I don't touch my art journal all day, I feel not great. I feel a little bit askew, shall we say. And so starting to build up a practice for yourself, sometimes that does take putting it into your calendar and making it something that you're committing to doing. And you don't have to be like me and do it every day. It could be that you set aside the live stream time and then maybe one other time during the week that's focused time for working in your art journal. And in between, you're collecting all the ephemera, right?
Yeah, that's great. Love that.
I think one other thing I'll say is don't be precious about the ephemera, meaning it's okay to combine things. I mean, you saw me with that heart piece, combining something kind of silly, kind of goofy with a vintage stamp. Don't be shy about putting things together that seem a little bit weird, right? Like, why am I doing that? Or saving things that seem like very strange. This is from chai packaging, but I was in Oregon, so I was like, well, and I was having Oregon chai, so I thought, well, I gotta put that in there. And then this word yes was there, and so I circled that. And I didn't plan that when I was ripping the package apart before I put it in the trash, but it just worked out really nicely that word was there. So keep your eyes peeled. Don't be precious about the ephemera. Save all sorts of things because you never know how you might use it.
That's great. Well, I think that's a good spot to end it for today, unless anyone has any final thoughts or feelings.
Is there anything else you want to share or any questions that you have? I don't know if you all can hear it, but Sammy's in the bathroom giggling. Oh, Sherry, that's great. Yeah. Don't tell your husband where I am or where to find me. I'm probably making a lot of people's families and friends and roommates like, really? What are you doing? Oh, here's a teaser for a future box. One time my friend and I were marbling paper and my roommates were all gone. And so we marbled paper and hung it up all over our apartment. Like every flat surface had paper that had been marbled that was drying. And my roommate, who was a chemistry pre-chem major, came home early and walked into the apartment, and it was just like literally just marbled paper everywhere. It was a bit tense when she walked in.
She probably freaked out a little bit.
Yeah, she's very meticulous, very clean biochem major.
Not an artist. I was just gonna say not an artist.
But we are still friends.
Not an artist, not used to spending time in a lived-in environment.
Yeah, no. But we are still friends, and actually everyone that lived in that house went on to get a PhD. So she is an MD. My other roommate has a PhD in chem, and I have a PhD in art therapy. So there was something going on in that house.
It's a doctor house.
Yes.
That's great. Yeah, don't throw out anything. Keep everything forever until you find a place. Actually, no, until you find a place for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, it's a good spot to end. Thank you all for joining us. Let me stop record here.